everybody, this is Dan Miller for Bluegrass Unlimited magazine, and today we're going to do part 3 of our Basic Banjo Backup. We've gone through a number of different things here, and today I'm going to give you a few little more ideas to do along with your rolls, and I'm going to do a couple fill-in licks, both down the neck and up the neck, and also talk a little bit about things like dynamics and articulation and accenting notes and timing and things like that, that also will play in getting different tone, that also play into your backup. So first of all, last time we talked about adding the 6th note of the scale relative to the root. So in G that was an E note, for C that was an A note, and in D that was a B note. And then we had some examples of that. Something else you can add is the 2nd scale degree. Now those of you who have studied any theory, you know that the major pentatonic scale is a 5-note scale, and it's the 3 notes of the chord plus the 2nd scale degree and the 6th scale degree, and the 3 notes of the chord are always going to sound okay. They're always going to sound great if you play the 3 notes of the chord over that chord, right? And then the next chord comes along, change to the 3 notes of that chord. That's always going to sound okay. That's always going to sound good. You're never going to get a rotten note playing that way. Now if you want to add a little bit more interest, like we talked about, the next safest note we added last week, which was the 6th scale degree, the next safest note after that is the 2nd scale degree, and you know, those are the 5 notes in the major pentatonic scale, and those tend to be, after using the 3 notes of the chord, those 5 notes tend to be the safest, most consonant notes that you can use. So if you want to do a backup that adds a little bit of interest but doesn't go too far out, doesn't get in the way of anybody, you can add notes, all 5 notes from the major pentatonic scale. So the notes we're going to use to add the 2nd scale degree to each of our 3 chords, we're working with G, C, D right now. We're going to add the A note to the G chord. We're going to add the E note to the D chord. We're going to add the D note to the C chord, and that's going to be the 2nd scale degree relative to the root of each of those chords. And so just a few little examples. For instance, G, I might go do something like this. So again, you're just adding that A note in there somewhere. The reason I'm telling you this is so you can explore this on your own. I'm not saying, okay, here's a lick and here's a lick and here's a lick. I am showing you some ideas, but basically by saying, okay, try these 2 notes in addition to the notes of your chord, I'm hoping that you will just experiment and find your own ways to do that, okay? So over the C chord, you could do something like, so over the C chord, we're going to add that D note. Okay, you got an open D here, and you got this D here. So you could do a lick something like this. Something like that. Or, opening this one up, you could do something like this. E, D, E, D. That's kind of a cool thing to add in there. And that's adding the the D note to the C chord, and then the other one is the E note to the D chord, and you can do something like similar to what I did over the C. So you get the idea. Again, mess around with that. For the G chord, add the E note and the A note. For the C chord, add the D note and the A note, and to the D chord add the B note and the E note. And so then over each chord you have the whole major pentatonic scale basically. We don't, until we get into melodic style banjo playing, we don't really think that much about scales, but if you think about the chord and just adding 2 notes, 2 different notes to every chord, then you'll be playing your major pentatonic scale and you won't really need to think about it that much. You're just going to move one finger and add those notes to these chords, and it'll make it sound more interesting. And again, your interest has to be tasteful interest. Don't go wild with anything, but adding those notes in does give you some interest in your playing when you're doing your rolls, okay? Okay, the next thing we're going to look at is adding a little fill lick. And again, you don't want to get too busy when the singer is singing, but when the singer stops to take a pause, it's nice to add a fill lick. Now again, if other members of the band are adding fill licks, you don't want to play fill licks on top of their fill licks. So you'll coordinate with other players in your band. If you don't coordinate, you want to just listen very good so that you're not all piling fill licks on top of each other. But where those fill licks usually are inserted is the resolving phrase of an 8-bar sequence. We've talked about this in other videos where most songs and tunes, of course songs they call it a verse and a chorus, and then other tunes like fiddle tunes they call it an A part or a B part like that. But usually you can divide them all into two measure phrases. The opening phrase we call the theme, and the next 2 bars we call the answer to the theme. The next 2 bars we call the sub-theme, and the 4th set of 2 bars we call the resolving phrase. And it's usually in that resolving phrase that you can add some fill licks. And now I'm just going to go over 2 or 3 real common ones. There's lots of them you can use, but I'm just going to give a few examples here. And so like if you were doing a song like Blue Ridge Cabin Home, and you're going, there's a well-beaten path on that old mountainside where I wandered when I was a lad. See all that space right there? That's when you throw your fill lick in. So you can see how that is, and there's, you know, you could do a variety of different things, and I'll tab some examples out in the tab that goes along with this lesson. But these are all standard licks and phrases, you know, this or if you're doing Scruggs style for any length of time, you're familiar with those licks. And so at the resolving phrase, if this resolving phrase, you're going back to the G, you know, you can throw in any of those kind of things and add some interest if other people aren't throwing those in. Another cool one that I love going up the neck would be, last week we worked on this little thing called that's another cool one. If you're going up the neck, that's kind of a famous one that Earl did. I'll tab that out as well. So the idea is when you reach those parts, you're just doing either you're chunking or you're doing your little licks like that, or you're whatever you're doing with your rolls. When you get to that space where the singer stops singing, you can throw in those other things, okay? And just experiment. You know, again, work with things that you know, work with little standard licks that you know out of the tune or out of the solo for the same tune. When you get to that resolving phrase, usually that's when those licks are going to appear when you're doing your solo too. So extract them out of your solo, the resolving phrase of your solo, and plug them into your backup, and that'll always work as well. Okay. So just one more thing I wanted to go over today, and that's we talked about the role of the accompaniment player, the rhythm player, and part of the thing was adding, supporting the song, supporting the singer, supporting the lyrics of the song, supporting the emotion of the song, all that kind of thing. A lot of that's going to come in to tone, dynamics, and note articulation, okay? So tone, you can change your tone by moving your hand up the neck. If I'm down here, sounds much more mellow up here. So a lot of times banjo players will come up here, especially when they go, instead of chunking down here, sounds harsh, they'll come up here, which sounds softer and more in the background. So you're not getting in anybody's way, you're sort of stepping back a little bit. Another thing to do if you're playing on stage is moving in and out of the microphone, but that's a different thing. But if you're in a jam session, you know, banjo players have this reputation, or this, you know, of being too loud. And you want to take note of that. So you want to have the ability to use dynamics to go in and out as well. And some of this, changing the tone to a softer tone and easing up on the strength and power that you're putting into your right hand, that is going to help you give some feeling and emotion to the song and not just be powering it away all the time. Okay? And the other thing, we got tone we can change by moving our hand around. And you know, different ways to attack the string as well. We won't get into that today, but you can change your tone a lot of different ways depending on the tone that you need at any given instant. And you're going to mix up all these techniques that we've been talking about as well. But on top of that, watch your volume, adapt your tone, and also use different articulation. Now by articulation I mean how long is that note ringing out, right? I could do this, for instance, this lick here. Okay, I articulated that with all the notes ringing. And I played it pretty solid and hard. Now, if I was doing backup, I might want to go. Okay? So 3 of those notes I cut off before and didn't let ring. The first one, there's 3 notes in there. The first one, the last one, and one there in the middle when I pick the D string with my middle finger. Listen to that. I'll tab it out, and for the notes that I cut off, I'll put a little rest, an 8th note rest behind the 8th note, so that you can tell when I'm doing that. And those are all quarter notes, the only quarter notes in that phrase, and I'm cutting off those quarter notes to give that little different kind of articulation. Now the other thing, when you go to a lick like this, if I play it even, so if I play it even, it sounds like that. But I can give it some more feel if I accent a few of those notes. Okay? So, accent notes, change your tone, articulates notes differently, play around with that, with all these little licks that we're working with, and you can start to give whatever you're playing a different kind of expression. And that's going to be real important. And listening and knowing when you want to lay back, when you want to go soft, when you want to move your hand up here, when you want to keep it back here, that's all just comes with experience. Listening to the dynamics of the band, listening to where it's adequate or appropriate to lay back, listen to where it's appropriate to punch in and add some power. All that just takes listening and working with the other members of the band or the jam. But if you will do that and think about that in all of the things that you do, everything you do is going to be more supportive and sound better if you have an awareness and think about that. So with everything we've done over the last 3 videos, all the technique that we've added, see if you can't work in different kind of dynamics, different kind of tones, different articulations to make everything sound better and fit in with what's going on with the rest of the band to help support the the song, support the other vocalists, support the instrumentalists, and see if you can get some of that happening in your banjo backup. Okay, this is Dan Miller for Bluegrass Unlimited magazine. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.